Hey there, thanks for being here for Organizational Behavior Chapter 1 lecture video. So Chapter 1, just like any other course, is really about an intro into this topic area. So I'm going to share screen here. I'm going to write some notes that correspond with the book. I usually try to follow the book as far as the content goes, but I'm going to be talking a little bit more real life, real world, and where you'll be reading about some concepts and definitions and theories in the book. I want to give you a little bit more of a real life spin to it, calling out some of the higher level points from the book. So hopefully you'll find this useful and be able to, in addition to reading the book, doing the smart book interactive reading, hearing me talk about it, having me write notes and talk about it, you writing notes and hearing it. Hopefully all these different ways you're getting this information can help you soak it in that much better. Let me go ahead and share a screen and we'll get chatting here about organizational behavior. Welcome to the class. This is a great topic when studying business. And I think in a lot of ways, it's an overlooked area. I see business as having two major parts. So any business you can think of has these two parts. The first part is what I would call a service or a product. And this service could be a trade. Think of like any of the construction trades, a plumber, a electrician, an HVAC, repair person, contractor, right? Any of these services, or in the professional world, accountant, investment advisor, lender, right? These are all people-driven services, or there's usually a product involved in some sort of company or many companies as well. Think of the many stores that you visit and buy products from, or Amazon online, those kind of things, right? So you have this kind of product, this thing that you're getting out of a company or out of a business. And then you've got the business. And I say it like this because every business you can think of has business on the back end. Was driving down the freeway last week. I look over and I see a 40-foot billboard, like 40 feet. I mean, it's this huge billboard hanging on the wall of a hospital. And it says, I'm making this up now, Chalk Hospital, we save children's lives, or whatever it says on there. It's a hospital. The service is providing, medical assistance, helping people when they're sick, that kind of thing, of course. But sorry, teaching at night, I'm going to be known as like the yawning professor or something. Even the hospital that has a pretty unique service also has business, right? That business has to do the same things that every other business has to do too, like marketing, hence the 40-foot billboard on the side of the building, right? They are hoping that when people see that, the next time they drive down the freeway or the next time they have to go to the hospital or their kid is sick, they go, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Chalk. Human resources, payroll, technology, IT, right? Every company is going to need certain things. Business planning, management, right? Think of all these things that you would encounter in any business. These are the skills that you're picking up in a business program. These are some of the skills that you're going to be learning in this organizational behavior class. Especially when we look at this business piece and all of the business stuff that goes on behind the scenes, usually that people don't see, the customers rarely interact with. Behind all of this stuff is people, right? The person doing marketing, the person running human resources, the person that's helping you with your computer. So at the end of the day, when we're talking a bit about business, so much, of course, there's so much business tech and technology, and maybe you don't even think about dealing with a person when you're ordering something on Amazon. But behind that business, in addition to the technology, in addition to the machines, there are people. This is the interaction that is lost on so many people, or lost on so many businesses. The number one reason people leave their jobs is because they have a bad manager. Think about that. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. It's just such a difficult work environment. Maybe you feel like you're not appreciated. Maybe you're not respected. Maybe you're not listened to. Maybe you're treated poorly, actively, bad. Maybe you're being discriminated against. Maybe you're being, well, you get the picture, right? Bad management, bad business culture is the number one reason why people leave their jobs. This interaction with people is so important in business. And oftentimes, even though we might rely on contracts and technology and emails and those kind of things, documents, at the end of the day, it's typically people that get those things done. It's the conversation, it's the negotiation that happens between two people. So I want to bring up a little bit personal perspective on this. This next part is not in your book, but I wanted to mention it here because I thought it would be important if you've never heard it before, just as a reminder. All of us people have needs, right? And so this guy Maslow created the pyramid hierarchy of needs. I bring this up here just to kind of remind you, as we sit here in chapter 1, the intro of all of this org behavior stuff. I want to remind you that we all have needs as people. At the end of the day, we all have to go home or go somewhere and sleep. We have to eat. We have to maybe help our families eat and sleep as well, right? And so at the root, at the base of this business, any business, when you're talking about people, is we all have these needs. If you've never seen it before, I'll just make a quick note. I always have a hard time spelling this one. Physiological needs is kind of at this base level. This is like food, water, shelter, sleep. The idea is if we have inconsistencies or we don't have this need met, the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm not a specialist in this area, okay? But I want you to get a picture of what we're talking about, like as far as a personal need coming out of this, even though it's the workplace and we oftentimes think about work as being separate from our personal lives. There it goes again, sorry. Maslow's hierarchy of needs says physiological, if this level isn't met, if we don't have a meal, if we don't have access to shelter or sleep or water, that we can't move up that pyramid. Now, let me ask you, if you have an employee who does not have regular access to meals, will that affect their work product? Yeah, it will, right? And so if this level isn't met, then the idea is we can't progress. The next level is safety. The idea that if we don't feel safe, we don't have safety in our employment, we don't have safety in our health, again, we're stuck at that level. We can't move on to the next. So, thinking about maybe not having health insurance. Again, not having shelter, potentially, you're not feeling safe. Maybe where you're living is not a safe environment. The next level, love and belonging. Now, when you think about the workplace, usually this kind of topic, we kind of don't want to talk about it, right? Because that can kind of get you in trouble, or you have to be careful about what you say. But the idea here is if an employee isn't felt either in their personal life and or at work, if they don't feel like part of the team, like part of the company, they don't feel that belonging, they're not going to be able to give the best work product, the focus on work. The next level, esteem. And all of these cap out at Maslow calls self-actualization. So the idea that, your best product, your best work, your best feelings, your best spirit, right? All this highest level of things. Now, again, I'm talking really personal level here. Organizational behavior is this not just how businesses work and how businesses are organized and how people in those businesses communicate and work together and those kind of things. But I want to bring back the focus here that we're talking about people. Like I said, especially, I feel like we've gotten a little bit better in the last couple of decades. But coming out of the Industrial Revolution, for example, it was all about product. It was move it out, build it, create it as fast as you can, and get it out there to sell. And if you're sick, or if you're not feeling well, or you get hurt on the job, somebody else is there to take your place. Today, we've taken more of a look at this personal perspective, and I feel like we value it more. We can get better. But I feel like oftentimes in business, this can be lost. There's much more focus put on productivity, about the net income, how much business are you bringing in, and that kind of thing. And so much, just to show you this is important, and this is actually in your book, there's a couple of different companies or associations or groups that are named, but I just wanted to kind of note a couple of them. And it talks about basically the top skills that are seen by these companies, these associations, the top skills that they're looking for in employees. And a couple of them, again, I'll just list off: leadership. If you never take an org behavior class, if you never had an opportunity to manage somebody else, if you've never been able to lead a team of people before, how do you learn the skill? If you go in, you're probably going to mess up. We all mess up. That's okay. But again, going back to that bad manager, maybe you work really hard and you get promoted, but that doesn't necessarily make you a good leader. And so again, top skill recognized in people. Again, this interaction with people, communication, collaboration, listening, those important things of leadership. Another thing noted was being able to work in teams. Now, in this class, I have you do a couple projects. I have you do them individually on your own. I do not have you working in teams, although one of the projects does focus on working in teams. I have you do it by yourself. Here's the reason. Working in teams is really unique, and I have never experienced it working well in education. Somebody always doesn't show up, or there's one person that doesn't do anything and everybody else has to make up for that person. It's a ton of work and agony to force students to work in teams, from what I have experienced. That said, how do you get the experience then? Well, not in this class. But I do want you to focus on how it can be done, because that's what you're learning in here, right? Throwing you into a team and saying, hey, figure it out, do a good job, your grade depends on it. Yeah, sink or swim, right? I want you to take this class and start learning these foundational pieces, so that when you have the opportunity to work in teams, you will know not just about some ideas on how to do well with that, but you'll also know more about yourself and how to communicate and work in that team setting. So we're not going to get there in this class. I actually see it more as here. I'm starting you're starting to see the foundational pieces of how this is supposed to work. Communication skills. One of the things that you'll work on in this class is discussion boards, right? How do you communicate that? How are the words that you're choosing? If you're disagreeing with somebody, how do you do that? And then, of course, when you're talking about somebody communicating in a group, in a team, on the phone, live in a Zoom session, right? All of those things come in how you communicate. This is super important in business and in management, in the function of a business. Super important. Collaboration. Not just communicating with people, not just being able to work in teams or to lead a team, but collaboration is super unique because it's like functioning in your work life. It's almost like having a spouse. How do you listen? How do you react? How do you guide? How do you make suggestions? How do you plan? All super interesting not easy things to accomplish. All super important in the workplace. Emotional intelligence. Now, this one I love. So if you've never heard this term, emotional intelligence, I first heard this term, emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, in my org behavior class in my MBA program at Cal State Fullerton. And after taking that class and hearing this term and listening about it, I thought to myself, oh, that's where my life growing up as a young boy and having 3 older sisters, this stuff now makes sense to me. First, let me explain the difference here in emotional intelligence, and then I'll tell you some really sad older sister stories. We've all heard about IQ, right? Your intelligence quotient. Usually people think about IQ as how smart you are. Interesting thing about the IQ, your IQ is the way your brain processes information. And believe it or not, your IQ does not change at all, or if very little at all, from the time you're at age 6. So if you can think about how you process information, how smart you are, how you think about things and manage information at the age of 6, your ability to do that doesn't really change as you get older. So people might look at that and go, oh, you know, how smart are you? You can't really change it. You can learn more things, but the way that your brain is wired and how you process information doesn't change that much from when you're 6 to when you're an adult. However, emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, these are the same thing, interchangeable terms. You can change. Now, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient or EQ, is seen as the way that you interact with people, the way that you can communicate with people. And just to give you a brief insight into this idea, if I'm driving a car and something runs out in front of the car, what's your immediate reaction? Slam on the brakes, right? You don't want to hit that thing that just ran into your car. It makes total sense. That's the right thing you have to do, right? Hit the brakes. However, let's just say that thing running in front of the car, you realize it's 20, 30, 50 feet ahead of you. Do you still slam on the brakes? Or maybe do you look in the rearview mirror at the car behind you? Because depending on how close that car is, if I slam my brakes, they're going to hit me. I'm going to hit that thing anyway, right? So maybe based on where that car is, if I have enough time to process this quickly, right? Depending on how close that car is, maybe I'll tap my brakes. Maybe I'll hit my hazard lights. Maybe I'll give some sort of warning before stopping quickly to alert that driver behind me that something is going on. Because how they receive the information is going to affect me. And because of how they're going to receive that information, I might change my actions, tapping the brakes, hazard lights, that kind of thing. So this is the idea of emotional intelligence. If you're feeling upset, maybe, as we just learned about the hierarchy of needs, maybe you didn't get to eat breakfast and your blood sugar is low, or you're just cranky because you didn't sleep much last night, or whatever it is. If I'm going to try to communicate to you and I don't recognize that you're sleepy or tired or you missed a meal, something's not right. If I don't recognize that and I just start talking to you as if I normally do, you probably aren't going to hear all of what I have to say, right? Much more importantly, I need to realize where you're at, or see where you're at, or recognize or ask you how you're feeling where you're at. And based on that information, maybe I change my communication or the way I word things, or even just the rate or the volume of how I'm saying something, because I want you to hear what I have to say. If you don't hear it, then I'm not able to communicate clearly to you, right? the goal is not being reached in the communication part. So the idea that I'm going to recognize where you're at, I might change my communication to try to meet you where you're at so that you can actually hear what I'm saying. This is the idea of emotional intelligence. The best part about this thing is that you can get better at it. I think it's in week 4, we do our project number 1. It's based on this concept. And I talk about it quite a bit through this class because it's such an, when we're looking at organizational behavior, how we interact with other people, this is such an important concept to understand. So if coming into this class, you've never heard of this, maybe you feel like you don't get along with people well, or maybe you feel like people don't get you, or maybe you feel anxious when communicating or talking to people, this is going to be a great area that you can improve in that will help you in your professional life and in your business. Emotional intelligence or emotional quotient. The book, again, we're talking about chapter 1. This is the intro, right? If you haven't taken intro to business before, there's this great term called stakeholders. And if you haven't heard this term before, it means basically anybody that can be affected by a company. So a stakeholder, an automatic stakeholder that usually comes to mind first, is the customer. What this company does, the product it sells, the service it offers directly affects the customers of that company, maybe the suppliers of the company. Right? If business is down, I can't buy additional raw materials, which means that the raw material sellers are hurt. I can't pay for extra marketing that month or that year, which affects the marketing company. I can't deliver more products to the store, which maybe negatively affects the store that's the retail store that's selling the product. And so suppliers, these third parties that are involved in a business, are also considered stakeholders. Sometimes one that's missed as a stakeholder is the employee. How that company is doing affects the employee. I remember when I was, I think I was still at Long Beach City College, I was working at IKEA, working on the sales floor, stocking shelves and moving pallets around and all that stuff. And I remember in summertime, there would be like over the microphone early morning before the store opened up, there'd be an announcement. Good warm morning and, welcome to IKEA, working there, whatever they said. We had the best sales day yesterday. We broke all the record sales. So today, everybody that's working gets free food on your breaks at your lunch, basically go eat as much as you can, free food. And they had like an employee kind of eating area that serves the same foods as they did in the customer facing restaurant. And so the idea that as the company was doing better or had a great day, that the employees benefited from that. As an employee, how do you think that felt? Especially being a college student, free food, are you kidding me? That's amazing. We oftentimes ignore the idea that the employees and how employees are treated, they're affected by the company too. So if we can keep this focus on employee needs, on the hierarchy of needs in those people, the fact that we are people in this workplace, they are affected by the company, and how we treat them also will affect the company. So kind of just an intro idea for stakeholders. Your book mentions a couple of things, and I don't want to go too deep in these, but I'll mention them because I think they're kind of important. And you'll read about some different models. And so you'll look at, again, chapter 1 intro, some different ways that businesses can be organized, which comes down to how people are structured in a hierarchy, how they communicate to each other, how can the interactions of these people manage or grow the business, or how does it function within the business. So there's some different models and analyses and anchors and that kind of stuff that you'll read through. We're in week 1 right now, chapter 1 at the end of the week here. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed at this point, like you have to start memorizing definitions, but I want you to kind of take this in just so you can kind of see like, oh yeah, these are some interesting concepts but don't feel like you have to start memorizing. If you haven't had me before for a class 2, you'll realize that what I'm trying to bring out in this lecture is really some of the high points and the most kind of real world perspective of what you're reading in the book. Diversity and inclusion is mentioned. This, of course, has had a lot of attention the last couple of years, and the idea of improving how we interact with and how we treat people that are different than us. I remember learning, I think it was in my MBA program as well, the idea of working with different generations. And so when we think about diversity and inclusion, we might often think directly to maybe race or nation of origin, what country you come from. But then we also have this other different ways that we look at diversity, like your experiences, your age. How do we make employees, no matter what they look like, no matter how old they are, how do we bring them into the fold so that they're part of this company? How do we encourage diversity? We know in business that diversity of thought is good. When everybody thinks one way and the company only does it based on a one way of thinking, that usually hurts companies. Having different opinions, having professional, respectful discussions about solutions to problems usually comes to better solutions. And so this idea of diversity and inclusion is a really important topic as we start to understand that in dealing with people that have different experiences and different perspectives, how do we have those conversations respectfully and professionally in the workplace? Because it does help business. It does help employee morale to be able to have those types of relationships and quality conversations. And I think related to that too, especially in the last couple of years, we have this work and personal life thing that in the past was much more defined. You go into work, you sit at your office from 9 to 5, you're at work. At 5 o'clock, you get home. Now it's personal time, right? Now bring in technology. Now bring in smartphones. Now bring in, your work email on your smartphone. And it's probably the last thing that you see when you go to bed. And it's probably the first thing you see when you wake up. Sometimes maybe even before you see your spouse in the morning. Right? That technology and that connection to social media, of course, but to the workplace and your job and your responsibilities outside of personal life, these lines have become really blurred with our technology, especially with our newer technology. And especially the last 2 years when most people at some point have worked in their personal space too. Right now in this lecture, I don't have an extra room in my house to have an office, but I'm super thankful that I do have an RV. And so right behind me is the steering wheel for the driving of the RV that we've had for several years for traveling and camping and that kind of thing. But it's become my driveway pandemic office. I can at least escape the craziness of the kids when I have to get some recording done. So this blurring of personal and work life has become really difficult for people, and almost like you can't leave it or you can't walk away. Yeah, I know there's some businesses that have incorporated work phones and that thing like voice over IP, and so they're actually getting work calls on a work phone. It just happens to be in their living room or something, right? So I think some companies have been able to continue with that work technology and work tools that you might have for your job. And I know there's some companies that have no tools or budget or IT like that. And it's literally like, this is Rick calling you on my personal cell phone because that's what I have to work with. But this is important. Understanding that there is a separation between work and personal life, I think is important for personal boundaries. Or you find it in some situations where maybe you can have healthy relationships at work that become friends, But for most instances, I think it's kind of healthy to have a little bit of a separation there. I'm not saying be separate people, be consistent, be who you are, right? But the way that you treat somebody on the weekend at night when you're hanging out after dinner or something is probably very different than you'd talk to your manager on, a Tuesday morning after a meeting. And so I think just to say it out loud, to recognize that. Of course, you're going to read more about it in the book, but these are some of the challenges that we're faced with today. Sorry, I was having a hard time reading my note. There was one other thing I just wanted to bring up too when we're talking about the workplace and how we act and how we interact with people. Your book talks about different types of individual behavior. And for me, this is just, I guess I'll just reiterate a little bit here. At the end of the day, I'm a person, you're a person, my colleague that I'm working with is a person. And how I interact with you and how I interact with that person, it does affect me. It affects my emotions. Might affect your emotions, how you're feeling. And if you're not feeling safe at work, then are you going to be able to actually do your work product on that pyramid? Self-actualization, you're not going to get there. The way that we treat people, the way that we think of people, is super important in business. And again, I think for the most part, especially in companies or in industries where it's typical to have more experience to move up the ladder, not necessarily education, these kind of things are where people get lost. And so for you being in this class as a little bit of an encouragement, learning about this, being open to learning about yourself through this class will help you get farther in business, will help you be more successful and interact better with people that you work with in the future. So I hope that's a little bit of an encouragement, a little bit of a, like, you can do it, going into this class. If anything out of this class, my goal for you is to have this be a functional learning experience that you can grow from, that will help you directly in your business, wherever that might take you. I know we have people in the class that already have bachelor's degrees. Some of you are looking to transfer to a 4-year. Maybe you're thinking about a master's degree in business or something. Maybe I have students that will tell me that they have family, or, their parents own a business and they're trying to help out their parents' business. Or maybe you have your own business, or maybe you just plan on being an employee the rest of your life. That's fine too. No matter what level or what breadth of experience you're getting into in business, as an employee, this information is going to help you as well. So that's just my quick kind of a quicker little lecture on chapter 1. Again, being the intro chapter, I didn't want to wear you down, but give you a little bit of insight into what we'll be focusing on in this book and for this class, and hopefully, help you feel good about learning something that's going to help you in your own future in your business. There we go. I love to hear any questions from you. I'll go ahead and stop recording and then answer any questions. Thanks so much.